Hashtag Doggy People with Phil Lassman.
Hello and welcome back to Hashtag Doggy People. This is the final part of our review show, part 3, being hosted by the fantastic Peter Egan and Mark Abram. I think I'm out of the job. So my next guest, I didn't know anything about her at all, and it was Angela and Martin Humphrey who asked me to invite her onto the show. Her name is Joanne Lefson, and she runs a very, very successful dog rescue charity based in South Africa called Oscar's Ark.
I do have a pig that paints. Her name is Picasso. She's 700 kilos. This is a major heavyweight abstract expressionist who, if she were to stand on your foot, you would never walk again for the rest of your life. She is huge. She sold millions of rands worth of artwork, so pounds is a different currency.
Oh, that's 17 quid.
That maybe one day it'll get there, but that was a second project. Long story short, a secondary project to Oscar's Ark Horse Project, acquired an amazing piece of property, always wanted to rescue some farm animals.
I don't know a huge amount about them, but I have heard of Oscar's Ark. Yeah.
I've never heard of them, but I'd like to know more about them.
Well, first of all, you if you watched the interview, we did actually take a little bit of a tour. We got to know her. She is a little bit, I would say, she's kind of an Ira character, and her operation is quite extraordinary. She rehomes an enormous number of dogs. Apparently in South Africa, there are an awful lot of dogs roaming around in the streets, and she's a tremendously passionate woman. She's very gifted in terms of her marketing. She does a lot of publicity stunts to raise money for her charity.
What sort of publicity stunts has she done with the dogs to raise awareness?
I'm really pleased you asked me that, Mark. Okay, try this. First of all, she took a dog called Oscar around the world. She visited every country in the world. She married this dog in Las Vegas, in a ceremony in Las Vegas. She took him skydiving. She's done, in the most incredible, she climbed halfway up Mount Everest with another dog. A Rupee, a dog that she adopted from India. I mean, she's just incredible. Her list of achievements is endless. She's a very special dog person, and that's why I wanted to have her on the show. She's really you'll hear more about her in the future, I'm sure. I'm certainly going to do a little bit more work to highlight the work she's doing. So Joanne Lefson of Oscar's Ark. I think she's going to come to the UK a bit later on. So if there's an opportunity at an All Dogs Matter event, we might be able to introduce her. My next guest is someone who really needs no introduction at all. He to me, he's like the Prime Minister, except he knows more about politics, certainly when it comes to animal welfare politics. I'm talking, of course, about the one and only Dominic Dyer.
Blair made his speech, and he was very good and always has been a good speaker, and he talked about all the things he was going to do in government. But it didn't really wash through them. It sort of went over their heads to a degree. And then when the questions came, they were all about the environment. They're about fur farms and whaling and fox hunting, recycling, many of which still very relevant issues today. So I remember speaking to a few people, the Mandelson and others at the time, and having this discussion with them about the need for Labour to address animal welfare issues. And I was one of those who sort of got them thinking about the need to look at putting together a manifesto, which they did do for the 97 election, looking at a whole range of issues.
Peter, I know that you and Dom go way back.
Do indeed, absolutely. I admire Dominic hugely, and he's is or was the chairman of the Badger Trust. Is that right?
Correct.
He also is an advisor to Born Free. He used to also, he comes from the corporate world, so he understands corporate thinking very, very well. He's always the worst person in the world to follow if you're giving a speech, because his ability to actually quote detailed facts is extraordinary. He's great in Parliament because he gives what politicians like, which is a lot of fact-based data about the subject he's talking about, which can be quite overwhelming. So he's an incredibly committed and impressive campaigner. And yes, I admire him hugely. I agree almost with everything he ever says whenever I'm on a campaign jaunt with him. He's great company, and he's a very, very admirable person, I think.
He's, again, someone who's really prolific, someone who's very well connected. As Peter says, he's a phenomenal speaker. I mean, you just sit there in awe that skill to deliver speeches and to
Only he
engage
and
with
I can
people.
do that. Yeah.
It's just you know, and I'm someone who was very sort of introvert and came from very sort of geeky, nerdy background. So when you see someone perform really a speech like that every single time, I'm always really impressed. He makes progress, and he's not afraid to challenge again on social media. Something I shy away from because I find it.
He's
I hate it.
controversial.
He's controversial, and no, he's definitely sort of part of the animal welfare family, and he makes progress.
He's got a Romanian rescue, hasn't he?
He's very involved. You beat me to it again, Peter. He's also, I was going to say, I didn't understand this. I didn't realise until I'd spoken to him that he's extremely involved, as involved, I would say, as Alison Stanbridge, with rescue dogs in Romania.
Yes.
He is, he's got a very strong commitment there. I believe he's one of the icons of animal welfare, and I was really honoured to have him on the show and proud to call him a friend. So look forward to seeing what he's going to do next. You never actually know. Mark, my next guest, I think I know that the floor has to be given to you because I know she's been your right-hand lady. I'm going to introduce her, of course, legend. It was another tremendous honour for me, for a little guy like me, to meet the really amazing Linda Goodman of the Cariad Hound campaign.
You can only keep so many dogs in your own home, really, realistically, and look after them. The rest end up in kennels, and a lot of people don't have a problem with that. But I would just ask anybody who doesn't have a problem with that, how long would you leave your own dog in a boarding kennel? If people would think more about that, they would think, God, no, it's appalling. Well, how can these dogs be allowed to spend their lives, incarcerated?
To me, she's the equivalent of sort of Jill Robinson, but in the UK. Someone who has got the most incredible backstory in terms of experiencing the actual cruelty involved. She originally lived, she's from Australia originally, but in the UK, she lived in Pembrokeshire, and she could live in and amongst puppy farms, so she could hear them 24/7, and did something about it. And in terms of grassroots campaigning, she has an advertising background, so she has that creative streak, thinking outside the box, never giving up. She's been my confidant for 12 years. We first met when she did a sort of 7 nights and 7 days in a pen or in a puppy farm environment, which she'd sort of televised online, and her relationship building with especially Welsh MPs and leading the Lucy's Law charge in Wales, the home of puppy farming, and becoming successful. And obviously Lucy's Law's coming into Welsh legislation in September this year. She's been victim of threats to her life, and she's just carried on. And I cannot speak more highly of Linda Goodman, and also credit to Sue, who's Linda's right-hand lady, who between them they ran Cariad. Probably the most impactful campaigner in the UK with regard to animal welfare, and a proper unsung hero as well, because a lot of the donkey work is done by Linda and the evidence gathering, and then I'm the one who sort of marches into Westminster, but I couldn't march into Westminster without Linda, without Sue, without other people like Julia and Sarah. And we're all part of the sort of little grassroots Lucy's Law family that we've been, for 12 years now working together. She is like my big sister, and I love her to pieces. And again, I'll drop anything to help Linda. And, she's got 3 ex-puppy farm breeding dogs. So the campaigning is one thing, but again, on a more personal level, she's rescuing, rehabilitating herself as well. These 3 beautiful little dogs. So yeah, she's an absolute legend, and incredibly inspirational.
She's so regal. I felt I was actually had an audience with the Queen. She was really very kind and very compassionate, and I agree. I mean, I'd only met her that time during the interview, but she really is a very warm-hearted and very genuine lady. Peter, do you know Linda?
I do, of course, yes. In fact, I met Linda through Mark in the very early days, probably about 10 years ago, Mark, I would say. And I was so impressed just meeting her to begin with, her knowledge and her compassion. And and a wonderful, wonderful, engaging personality. And then, of course, I was again delighted to be a patron for Cariad for the time that it was up and running. She has given some of the best presentations I've ever seen. They are always superbly fact-based, compassion-based, and very, very witty and human. And so I'm greatly impressed by her on so many levels. And I was delighted also to be able to present her a couple of years ago with an Animal Hero Award that she's so richly deserved. And she's a remarkable, remarkable woman and a remarkable campaigner.
And she's not afraid to be controversial either. Yeah. When she does her, which is a big deal, because, you know, especially these days with social media, you do, you know, to leave yourself exposed, vulnerable, it isn't fun. Yeah. But she says it how it is. It's, as Peter says, it's evidence-based, and it's only because she cares. She is going on to a different project, which is kind of a following on of what she's just been doing, and you'll know about it soon. And it's really exciting, and it's actually perfect for her and her skill set and what she's capable of, which is pretty much anything.
Now, my next guest is I think someone we all know her and we all love her. I think she's someone who would make a brilliant guest on the One Show, to be honest with you. She could just talk dogs instantly, on and off camera. She narrates her own clips. She can do anything. Why? Because she's a professional presenter herself. I am talking about, of course, the one and only Anna Webb.
So, you know, doggy dancing is a sport.
I didn't know it was a sport.
So I got totally loving canine freestyle in about 2006. So I liked dancing, and I thought, how perfect. It was one night I had the Bee Gees on, and I was just dancing around with that. And I got Molly involved, you see. And I just thought, gosh, this is it. So then I watched... I got totally hooked. So, and the next thing was I'm entering competitions. So basically, Anna is the only person ever to have entered a canine freestyle event with a bull terrier. Because needless to say, all of the dogs are collies. We did all right. We came 8th out of 35.
Not bad, not bad.
Pretty good.
Well, Anna is absolutely sensational. I first met her when I spoke to Joe and Anna on the Barking Hour. She's remarkable. She's fantastic. Her knowledge is amazing. She's a great lover of English bull terriers, I think, isn't she?
Yes, yes.
And had that wonderful dog always in the studio. And her, you know, her knowledge is phenomenal. Her commitment is phenomenal. Yeah, I think she's just terrific. She's great. Always great to see. And as you say, a great presenter and a great interviewer. Yeah.
Mark, you know Anna very well, don't you?
Yeah, brilliant. One word, energy, really. She's just always buzzing. And always positive, and great on the radio. I've been a guest on this show for many times, and again, very accommodating, because I'll have something that I think, you know, needs to get out there, and she'll introduce me to the producer, and we'll make it happen. Someone who's very much in it for the dogs, and a real team player. And someone that it's really lovely to have on side. And again, you know, we're talking about, you know, achieving stuff with the minimal resources. To have her show and to have her energy, and also her podcast now and her presence on social media, we, you know, again, it's progress being made in somewhere else.
You won't believe this, but it's the truth. Doggy People, the whole series was down to Anna. I went to have lunch with her about 3 years ago over a Christmas with Ira. I just tagged along, and she was talking to me. She mentioned that she was going to make her podcast, A Dog's Life, and she was talking about this brilliant producer, Mike Hansen of Pod People Productions, going to give him a little plug, who produces Anna's show. And she said, did I know anything about podcasting? And had I ever thought about doing a show that could, because I said, you know, Anna, I'm really frustrated. I'd like to come up with a plan that I can actually do something concrete, something that actually means something in the world of animal welfare. And she said, well, why don't you do a show? I think you'd be quite good at it.
It's all her fault, is it?
It's her fault that you've had to do this with me today. It is. It is. So when you see her, you can tell her off. We're coming now to the last person that I interviewed in the series. This was a very serious subject indeed. And it's one that I think, I certainly have a great deal of passion for. It wasn't pleasant. It wasn't pleasant to hear some of the hard-hitting facts that we had to sit and listen to. But this gentleman, I was very grateful for him to come onto the show. And there was no frills about it. He just told us exactly like it is and what they're doing about it. I'm talking about the Alliance Against Greyhound Racing. And the gentleman who came on to represent the organisation was a guy called Richard O'Brien.
What is happening is these dogs are being put to known risks. They're very well highlighted. Their own statistics prove it. And since 1926, when it first sadly started over in this country, dogs have been getting injured and dogs have been getting killed. And dogs will continue to be injured and dogs will continue to be killed. Even if they use straight line racing, the dogs will still be bunching together and still be having accidents. So the answer is, and the technology is available, is to provide the betting industry with a product, use virtual racing.
Greyhounds are beautiful dogs. We've said that before. They make amazing pets. And I just wanted to delve into what this whole business of greyhound racing means. Peter, what do you know about greyhound racing? What are your thoughts?
I don't know a huge amount about greyhound racing other than it's appalling. I do know how badly greyhounds are treated, with what disrespect, and certainly in an age where our government is at last recognizing sentience, to put a poor animal through the cruelty that these animals are put through just for a bit of fun is absolutely appalling. Also, it's no longer now a day out or a night out at the greyhound track because people don't attend. It's all done online. So as you say, you could do it with as a game, basically. You don't need to have live animals. I'm completely, I have to say, against any form of gambling that involves animals, whether it be horse racing or any of that kind of thing. It is absolutely appalling. It's totally money orientated, has nothing to do with compassion or care or understanding. I find it to be absolutely a totally out of date hobby, a disgusting one, and one that not only destroys the lives of beautiful animals, it also destroys the lives of some beautiful human beings. The Greyhound Association police themselves. They don't have an independent auditor in terms of sentience and welfare and rights. They do it themselves. And as you say, so many of these poor creatures are just dumped when they are no longer, they don't make it, they don't make the grade, when their career is over and their joints are wrecked. There's no backup for this. They're just dumped. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting, and has no place in modern society, in my opinion.
Most racing happens behind closed doors and it's just filmed and then shared online with the sort of overseas markets, especially sort of Russia and China. So what a lot of people think is greyhound racing being office parties, Christmas parties, stag do's, Saturday night, a few beers down the dog track, is actually sort of 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. every single night in all these stadia around the country, racing hundreds of dogs with no thought to their, or minimal thought to their health and welfare. I'm quite involved with the campaign to ban greyhound racing, and there are huge steps being taken behind the scenes, which is really encouraging. One thing, again, people don't realise is there's a greyhound forum which sort of oversees, on paper, technically oversees and tries to improve the welfare of greyhounds. But that's composed of some of the biggest animal welfare charities in the country. So they're complicit. Either you're for it or you're against it. You can't sort of be involved in a way the promotion of it. It's a very complicated industry, but things are happening. as I say, very encouragingly behind the scenes, and full credit to these campaigners, because it's not a nice industry to campaign against. It's some pretty nasty and powerful and rich and just horrible individuals. But progress is being made, and I agree, it's barbaric. We're better than that. It's 2021. Progress is being made much quicker elsewhere in the world, like in Florida, for example, they've banned it. So it's always a bit embarrassing when a nation of animal lovers is still promoting complicit in exploitation of animals, when a so-called nation of lesser animal lovers has actually dealt with it and cut it out completely. So but things are moving in the right direction, and I'm pretty convinced that we'll see some progress in the next couple of years that will hopefully start phasing out the industry.
It is, as Peter said earlier, it's old-fashioned. It's like smoking. You know, it's just completely unpopular. People don't do it anymore. So it can be replaced like that with some sort of digital little thing that flies around. These dogs, when they make a turn on the track, they're running around in a tight circle, they're reaching speeds of up to like 48 miles an hour. And can you imagine a dog just spinning around at 48 miles? The pressure, as you said, Peter, on their joints, they just bust bones, and they,
there's so many. Sorry to jump in. There's so many issues to do with, the curvature of the track, the distances they travel, the number of races they're made to run, the lack of accountability, which Peter touched on. I mean, imagine if it was cockapoo racing, or pug racing, or French bulldog racing. It just wouldn't it wouldn't get anywhere. But it's almost like, because they're sort of brown and boring dogs, in inverted commas, they don't really matter. And again, weirdly, it's back to what Peter says. It's almost a selective compassion. It's almost like, because they're not the lovely fluffy pets, they can do all that stuff. It's exactly the same as eating meat. We eat the animals that aren't polar bears, they aren't penguins, they aren't anthropomorphic, they don't have any connection with us in terms of how they appear or how they act. So it's okay to mistreat them, or to abuse them, or to exploit them. It's all about exploitation. And what we should be doing as a race, as a people, as a society, is to minimize exploitation of the most vulnerable. And greyhound racing is a perfect example of exploitation of an animal that looks slightly different to the same species, which are pampered and wear nice collars and go to poodle parlors. And again, for money and for greed, it's something that really, as you can possibly tell, irritates me. But it irritates me on so many levels, because it is the absolute epitome of exploitation.
What is interesting is, and I agree with everything you said there, Mark, is there's such a misconception about greyhounds, because greyhounds are wonderful lap dogs. They love to sit on the sofa next to you and put their head in your lap.
Couch potatoes, yeah.
Exactly. They're wonderful. They make the most amazing companion animals. They're just fabulous. But as Mark says, they look a bit kind of austere and remote and independent, So you can treat them, be at a distance emotionally from them. It's awful.
Let's hope that the AAGR, as they're sometimes known, continues to move forward, and I think they will. They're a bunch of very determined people indeed, and they're not going to back down from this. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from Mark and Peter about all of our guests, and as you know, if you've been a regular viewer to the show, I always make an appeal for the guest charity, and I herald it by announcing it with my humongously heavy big brass bell. But this week, of course, it being the final show of the series at the moment, I'm going to ask Peter and Mark in turn to make the appeal. So, Peter, if you don't mind, we'll start with you. You've got your 30 seconds or 45 seconds to make the appeal for the charities that have appeared on the show.
The first appeal I would make is on behalf of the amazing charity called Animals Asia. In 2022, they have managed to get the Vietnamese government to agree to ending bile farming in Vietnam. They need to raise a huge amount of money in order to make this happen. So my first and big appeal will be to anyone listening to this show to donate and support Jill Robinson and her amazing charity, Animals Asia.
Thank you, Peter. Mark.
Thanks, Phil, and it's been a pleasure being in your company, and obviously, as always, Peter's company. I would just say that sort of overarching all your guests, be inspired by them, look into their backstories, read the history of what made them start campaigning and the minimal resources they have and often still have, but the difference they can make. So I would basically say, think about what you can do, and think about something that maybe upsets you. It doesn't even have to be an animal welfare, but maybe protecting the most vulnerable. Follow all those people on social media and start sharing their posts. And you're already starting to do something to be part of the solution. Allow yourself to be inspired, take some time out to learn more about all these individuals and all these charities, and either maybe start your own campaign, join their campaign, or just, share the incredible work that a lot of these people are doing and continue to do, because the more their stories are shared and their campaigns are shared and their solutions are shared, the quicker we reach a much better world for animal welfare and human welfare as well, as we've heard. So get involved with campaigning. It doesn't have to take up a lot of time, but everyone can do something. And it's much better than finger pointing, blaming and expecting other people to do it, when the resources are actually there and free for everyone to get involved and to help make the world a better place.
Well, guys, that's amazing. I just wanted to ask you to do one further thing, and that is to summarize the series of Doggy People. I think you've mostly covered it, actually, Mark.
I think it's very important, and I think people do feel better about themselves if they feel they are making a contribution that is making change. And people very often get a feeling that they, as an individual, are not powerful enough or strong enough, or their voice won't be heard or isn't important enough. And I would just say, your voice is important, it will be heard, so take the trouble to support any charity that you are drawn to.
Thank you, Peter. Well said.
My favorite quote is a Dalai Lama quote, which is, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito, which basically means we can all do something, and we all should do something, and we all can do something. Phil, with your Doggy People, you've created a platform where individuals, charities, campaigners can talk about their backstory, because you're so brilliant at asking the questions, and that potentially can inspire, raise money, provide solutions, and again, it's a resource that wasn't there before, that only really you can do in the way that you do it, that can impact on so many animals and so many human lives. So proud to be part of it. And again, I'm a massive fan of yours, and I'm a massive fan of Peter's, and it's all about working together with what we have to make stuff happen and get better.
It's worth pointing out that we are learning more and more, and particularly after this pandemic, how interdependent everything is on our planet. The wildlife, the human population in relation to every other species on this wonderful planet. And so we have to learn how we can support systems that are going to not only make the lives of other species better, but also the health of our planet better, which ultimately then will result in our health as human animals being better as well.
Well, Peter, Mark, I can thank you from the bottom of my heart for not only starting the series, but also helping me to complete this series. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for all the support you've given us. Bless you for being the people that you are. And we'll all be following you wherever you go. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Phil. And thank you
Look
for
after
everything
yourself,
you're doing.
and see you soon. God bless you both. Love you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the very last episode of the current series of hashtag Doggy People. I really hoped you enjoyed meeting Peter and Mark, once again, the two doyens of animal welfare. I'm very proud to call them both my friends. I will be back with another series. It may be in a little while. In the meantime, if you do have any particular people you feel that deserve a platform to talk to us about their work in animal rescue, doesn't necessarily just have to be dogs, drop me an email, send me a tweet. I'll be more than happy to take that on board. So thanks very much indeed for watching. you know what I want you to do. If you can, please engage with the charities, send them a small donation or sign up for a small monthly direct debit. And I'll see you in a little while. In the meantime, stay safe, love your dog, and cheerio.